I am a 35 years old female. I don't have the best relationship with my husband's mom. Since day one she tried to make remarks and compare me to her. She then tried to get on my good side and started overly praising everything I do and sometimes even copying me, like that one time when she dyed her hair purple just like mine, and when everyone pointed out how ridiculous she looked. She actually blamed me and accused me of trying to make a joke out of her. So, anyways, my husband and I took 2 weeks off work to go visit some places out of the country, tourism in other words. Thing is, I was the one who saved up for and arranged for the trip. My husband was responsible for booking the tickets. My husband's mom wanted to come along and threw temper tantrums when I said no. She called, texted, sent people to talk to me into letting her come. Even threatened to call the police and make some complaint up to get us to stay if she can't come. My husband said we should just take her, but I told him he was wrong to tell her about the trip in the first place. He gave me an ultimatum. Said he wouldn't go if she can't come, and I told him I'd gladly call his bluff, which made him take his words back and say, fine. I will tell her to stop it because we won't take her. Things got quieter, suspiciously quieter. The day of the trip came and we got to the airport at 2 p.m. My husband was walking ahead of me and was looking left and right like he was looking for someone. I asked him, but he didn't respond. He led me to the waiting area, and first thing I saw was his mom standing there with her luggage. I froze in my spot. I felt a cold wave washing over me and I was fuming inside. She and my husband were hugging. That's when I quietly turned around and started walking towards the exit. My husband followed me while shouting at me to stop. He tried to stop me, but I told him off the harshest way possible. He tried to say I was overreacting and that his mom was there anyway and I should let it go and not mess the trip up for us. I told him he and his mom could still go and that I was going home. I went home and sobbed into my dog's fur for several minutes. Turned out he booked her a ticket without me knowing. An hour later he came home yelling and raging about how pathetic and spiteful I was to walk out and go home and ruin the trip last minute. I told him he caused this to happen. He said that I was being so hard on his mom, it's ridiculous. I refused to fight anymore, but he kept on berating me, then called my family to tell them that the trip was cancelled, and that it was because of me. My family said that I shouldn't have ruined it for myself and should have sucked it up and done my best to enjoy. My brother and I do not get on. When we were younger he'd go out of his way to make my life a living hell. To my parents' credit, they did tell him off for it when they caught him, but they both worked long hours and didn't have the energy to deal with our arguments. This continued into adulthood. He was salty that he failed his college course the first time around. There was a bad argument in our family a while ago, and it all started because I refused to decorate my brother's living room. I won't go into too much detail, but he wanted a pretty hefty discount. I said no and he threw a tantrum. Instead of being a grown-up and talking to me, he decided to hook up with my toxic ex-girlfriend and the mother of my child. I can't go into a lot of detail about what she was like, but she was not a nice person. She never really bonded with our son when he was born, and I was left to do everything by myself. She eventually walked out on us and refused to have any contact with our son. She'll post on Facebook now and then about her beautiful baby boy to get sympathy votes, but that's about it. I have been a single dad for almost 3 years now and I absolutely adore my son, but it hurts to think that one day he might question why his mom didn't want anything to do with him. How am I supposed to explain that to him? Anyway, it bothered me when my brother told me they'd hooked up together. It hurt even more when he started dating her. It had taken me so long to get over what she did to me and my child, and now my own brother was bringing her back into my life. Yesterday we had a family video call. Parents are high risk and we're not taking any chances. When my brother decided to announce that he and my ex were expecting, I just froze. I didn't know what to do or think. I could feel myself starting to cry a little bit and it got a bit harder to breathe. Eventually, I decided to just congratulate them and then made up some lie about needing to put my son down for a nap and left. I received a bunch of messages from my brother and his GF telling me that I stole their thunder. After I left, my parents and some other family members started worrying if I was okay, and not really focusing on their news. My uncle told me that I should have just been a man and stuck it out instead of making excuses to get out of it. After all, it was expected that our kids would be raised around each other. I feel like maybe I shouldn't have left the call, but at the same time it would have been worse if I'd stayed and had a full-blown panic attack in front of everyone. Some of the family members are split and have argued that I won't be able to avoid my brother and his family forever, but others believe I was in the right to leave that situation. I don't know what to think. My parents aren't happy, but they don't have the energy to deal with all the hassle my brother would cause. They actually cut him off for a little while when he started dating my ex, but he phoned them constantly and, again, can't go into much detail, but he said he'd do something not so good. They keep him at arm's length, but I have told them not to cut contact because of me. If they want to cut contact on their own accord, then that's fine, but I do not want to be the reason that they have to deal with his tantrums. The rest of the family, for the most part, weren't happy about it but accepted it, or pretended to. When they started getting a bit more serious, my uncle, who told me to be a man, thought it was funny. That's just the kind of person he is. Not for my sake, but for the sake of my son. I don't want to put him through all that. My son is almost 17. This Christmas we bought him an expensive computer gaming chair, as he plays a lot of online multiplayer shooters. My son has some anger issues, which he's currently in therapy for, and these shooters tend to bring out his temper more than normal. However, for the past few months he's been keeping it together well, so I figured the chair might be a fair present. I was wrong, because the day after Christmas he was gaming, started to have bad luck. He was losing his patience. This culminated in him screaming insults and then picking up his chair and slamming it into the ground, breaking the back of it. After talking him down, we had a very serious conversation about him no longer being allowed to play multiplayer games while under my roof until his therapist feels comfortable with his progress, talked about coping mechanisms, etc. However, I made it very clear this was unacceptable and he would be grounded. We've had these heart-to-hearts many times, so it's not like every time he has an outburst I'm making light of it. It's a serious issue and treated like such. However, when he came to me later that day and told me he'd like me to replace the chair because it was a gift, he really liked it and it would only be fair, the frustration, disbelief and disappointment in his behavior boiled over and I started laughing hysterically. As in a full laughing fit, barely able to breathe or talk. The more he'd plead his case, the harder I'd laugh. Repeatedly asking him how it was fair in his mind to have me replace a gift I paid for that he broke in anger. This obviously pissed him off more, which led to him getting emotional, but I just couldn't seem to stop myself. I tried walking out of the room and asking him to drop it, but every time he'd say, "But I need a chair," or "What am I supposed to do now?" I'd laugh again. I tried explaining that I'm not laughing at his feelings. I'm laughing at how absurd it is for him as a teenager to expect me to replace he can't be bothered to treat with respect, and then whine about it when he broke it. He's still pissed about it, and feels slighted. I feel bad for laughing, and honestly wonder if I had some sort of mini stress break myself. Because it's never happened before and I couldn't seem to stop. But at the same time, I stand by the fact that his request was ridiculous enough to make most people want to laugh. My fiancé, James, and I have been together for 3 years, planning a wedding for October 2016. A few months before we met, James bought a brand new home in a newer subdivision. We recently refinanced it and added my name. Before me, James dated a woman, Britt, for about 7 months. She's never been to this current house. From what he's told me, they broke up when he decided they weren't as compatible. The breakup was rough, to the point where he and neighbors called the police when she wouldn't leave his front yard and was screaming at 10 p.m. at night. This is all from what he and his sister have told me. I don't have a reason to not believe them. I've only had a few run-ins with Britt. These have been at restaurants or just coincidences out in public. We never spoke up until now. The problem, Britt has bought a house in the same subdivision that we live in. We even share a cul-de-sac. The only reason we found out about this is from a flyer we got welcoming her to the neighborhood. Our subdivision is very community-oriented. James insists he's never told her where he lives and hasn't spoken to her since the night he called the police. We both brushed it off as a coincidence, but lately it's becoming very weird. Here's why. I work for a company that allows me to work from home 3 out of the 5 days. Our home is a ranch and my office window faces the street. I'm not sure what Brit does for a living, but she does not work during the day. From about noon until 3, she spends her time walking up and down our street. When she passes our house, she doesn't take her eyes off of it. It's almost like she can see me in the office. She'll even stop in front of our house and stretch there for about 5 minutes. Every day anyone is at home. It makes me uncomfortable to the point where I have all of our blinds closed during the day. I understand the need for exercise, but she walks for 3 hours just going up and down our street. Another issue is when either James or I are outside with the dog, she'll let her dog outside and it will come sprinting to our yard. This causes her to come and get her dog. Every time she says, "I'm sorry, we're still working on training." James and I are always polite. Normally, I would be okay with this, but James has pointed out that any other time she lets her dog out and we're not outside, she'll immediately correct him before he runs off. She never corrects him when we're outside. We've been getting ding-dong ditched a lot since she's moved in. Something that's never happened in the 4 years that James owned the house. The doorbell will ring around dinner time, between 6 and 8, and by the time anyone gets to the door, no one will be there. It's gotten to the point where our Doberman has picked up the routine and waits by the front door, pacing. The last issue, which I believe might be illegal, is that our mail seems to go missing for a while and then pop back up. What I mean is, Brit will knock on our door and say that she received our mail and is just returning it. This has never happened with the previous owners in her house. We don't have a new mail carrier either. It seems to happen once a week and she'll always bring it on a Friday night. Based on the date on the envelopes, we can tell she's been holding it all week. This has pushed James over the edge because she had our water bill, which resulted in us being 2 days late on the payment. James is neurotic when it comes to paying bills. Every time I have to convince him not to go over and yell at her because we haven't actually caught her taking it out of our mailbox as much as I try to monitor it. She usually gets 2 days worth of mail because those are the days I'm not working from home. The other days I get it right away. I'm not sure what to do at this point. I don't want to piss her off by confronting her, but how can I get her to stop? She's making us nervous and I feel uncomfortable in my own yard most of the time because I know she is watching. I know this sounds strange, but I'm not sure if I can legally do anything about it. I don't have anything against her, it's just becoming an annoyance.